and welcome back to Trading Thoughts for another COVID episode, I suppose you might want to call this. One of our video recordings that'll be going out live to everyone. And don't forget, you're going to be able to get it audio as well on Spotify and whatnot. We're the home of everything business, economics, and financial markets. And I'm joined once again, straight from Germany, by Mr. Paddy O'Grady. How are you doing, Paddy?
I'm good, Pearse. Maybe a little bit nervous about finally making my debut on the big screen, going from being a radio star to a TV one.
Well, you know what they say, Paddy, video killed the radio star, but you're still going.
Yeah. Makeup artist did a good job, I'd say, yeah.
You probably should have told her to have a go at the hair as well, Paddy. And joining us as well is the very formidable Mr. Eoin Hickey. How are you doing, Eoin?
Good to be back. Yeah, it's always good to get a few minutes doing something else other than sitting down watching TV or walking within my 5K radius. So happy to be occupied elsewhere. Yeah.
Sounds like the existence of a little goldfish and swimming around in his bowl or something.
Oh, big fish in a very small pond in Skerries.
Yeah, no, I think we're all kind of feeling the pain of the lockdown as well. But it's all for a good cause. But guys, I suppose a little bit of maybe doom and gloom for the topic today. Paddy, what are we going to be discussing?
We're going to be talking about business schools and how COVID-19 is impacting them and what kind of the future for them looks like. When we're talking about business schools, I guess we're talking more like at let's say the graduate level, students coming in to do things like Masters of Accounting, Masters of Finance, stuff like that. But then also looking maybe for some of our listeners as well, who are thinking about doing their MBAs, maybe once they've hit their 3 years of experience, we're going to be talking a good bit about that as well.
Interesting. All right, well, let's get right to it. So, COVID has obviously taken over the lives of everyone and everything it can touch, and possibly everything in the world has changed somewhat or some way because of COVID-19. But in terms of business schools, Paddy, maybe just before COVID took on, what kind of shape were they in?
Well, it was a mixed bag, yeah. I mean, for the very elite schools at the top, when you think of like maybe Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, I mean, year on year, they were getting stronger. Applications were going up, and the quality of those applications was just getting better and better in terms of the kind of profile they were attracting. But at the very top, that's kind of an exception to what was going on across the rest of the field. For the most part, MBA applications were going down year on year. Even a lot of schools had to even stop their programs or, cull the numbers a little bit on intake. When it comes to thinking about reasons why, MBA applications were falling, I suppose maybe you can point to, technology is enabling more people to go online and the internet and like learn kind of business concepts there. But also I think we can't ignore the fact that we've just gone through a really strong bull economy for the last few years. And for most people, maybe it didn't make sense to step away from that when they had a well-paying job to maybe go to business school for 2 years. And, when you look at the opportunity cost, normally people maybe decide to go to business school during a recession. They can kind of ride it out a bit.
Yeah, so I suppose that's a good point. Like these things, business schools, masters, MBAs, they come in their ebbs and flows. And I suppose we were probably probably in a bit of an ebb there at the moment with a strong economy. But, when you look at places like Germany, touching on technical recession, Italy in recession, US was sort of slowing down, as was China. Could you have thought that maybe, there could have been a bit of more of a flow coming back into an MBA situation? Maybe they would have been, there might have been a bit more demand in the next couple of years. And I suppose with COVID coming in, how do you think that might have affected that?
Yeah, I think if we're going through something like the 2008, 2009 recession all over again, or a typical kind of downturn, you would expect uptake for these kind of programs. Of course, with coronavirus now, it's a completely new beast. With campuses shut down, for instance, suddenly business school is maybe looking less appealing. There's restrictions on travel. I know for the US, for instance, a lot of people, or even, a lot of students come to Europe because they want to take up some of the kind of visa privileges that come with studying somewhere. And yeah, then you look at it from a point of view of networking. It's kind of tough to justify maybe the outlay when you're not going to be able to network as well with, whether it's with other students and kind of building a friends circle and having a great experience, or even when it comes to meeting employers, that kind of thing. That's all comes into the business school experience and what you're paying for. Students might be inclined to think now that they're overpaying for a Zoom degree.
It's a very funny way of putting it, I suppose. Mr. Eoin Hickey, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of students are going to be looking at this now and how everything's gone online and saying, what is the point in spending €10,000, €15,000, €20,000 moving abroad to a campus that's closed? Or even if you're in Ireland and you're saying, I'm going to spend €20,000 or €15,000 on an MBA to have everything conducted online. It's very difficult to say that that's going to be worth its salt at the end of the day. Whereas they could be making money elsewhere rather than spending the money on online courses when you can find them for a dime a dozen in small modular kind of things online that might suit their skill set and suit the industries that they want to move into, rather than an MBA as a whole, which is I suppose a lot of people and a lot of students will be looking at the moment.
And I think
sorry, go ahead there, Paddy.
Oh yeah, I think and it's important to point out that, to elaborate on that with the distinction that at the graduate level, the fees are just much, much higher compared to what they are at the undergraduate level, and you're paying so much more. So there's obviously that risk, and you really need to make sure you're getting that kind of return on investment.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose, Eoin, you were kind of probably maybe one of the people who were finishing up their undergrad recently in the last few years, and you probably opted against an MBA or a master's program. When you were faced with that challenge, do you think you'd be more or less likely to go down the MBA route or master's route now than you would have been back when you were graduating?
See, that's an incredibly difficult decision to make at the moment. Last year for me was, like Paddy was saying, we were in a bull economy, so it was very, the decision for me was do I go out into the job market where there were jobs for people. It was an employees market at the time when employers are crying out for skilled graduates to come onto their workforce. And the other decision in my head was that, do I go into a course to try and possibly upskill to get ahead of that? If it's an employees market, there's plenty of employees out there and you'd want to get ahead of the competition. At the minute now, that choice for so many people out there has been totally upended. It's likely that there will be less jobs come September when the milk rounds are being done. But the other side of it is, does a student or does a potential graduate student say to themselves, do I pay the money to do my courses on Zoom as we're doing at the moment? Do I spend €15,000 to get resources that are essentially free from many online places? Like, you can get plenty of different lectures done on YouTube for free. Do you need to go to Zoom for those lectures? It's all about the accreditation at the end of the day, which is the other side of it. But that comes at a big cost at €10,000 or €15,000.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose we've kind of then established that there could be a medium to long term potentially, knock on demand. That probably definitely in the short term there will be for these kind of higher education courses. But I suppose in crisis, there can often be positives found. Is that the case for maybe Paddy? Maybe you might be the man to answer this question. Has that been the case? Has there been any sort of positives for the higher education industry with this crisis?
Yeah, business schools have been under a lot of pressure to respond, competently amidst, a lot of demands from students for tuitions and reductions in tuition, or even, they were looking for refunds that they weren't quite getting the experience that they were paying for. But there have been some kind of, positives to take away from what's been happening at business schools more recently. And one of them is that, you now don't have any class limits. You know, think back to when we were in UCD, and they had the limit on how many students could be in a class, and how it was sometimes ferociously competitive to get into all the classes you wanted. So we're seeing, it's kind of opening up a bit more options for students, and some of the really top-notch faculty are able to, reach a kind of a wider audience within that student body, which is really good. One thing that a lot of people have said has been really great has been guest speakers. The business schools have been able to draw particularly heavy on their alumni, who've been very willing to engage more with classes than they were in the past. Now you don't have to schedule things as tightly. You're not giving up as much as your day to go in and talk to students and meet people. You can just hop on your laptop and do it from there. So yeah, the quality of guest speakers has gone up. And I think something that will kind of happen in the next year or two, because of that kind of success with guest speakers, has been we're going to see more collaboration with players in the industry to do kind of case studies and to do work on real life projects.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I suppose I just want to expand on one of the things that you mentioned there, Paddy.
Yeah.
So with the kind of Zoom lecture, as you might want to put it, you made the point that capacity limits have kind of been lifted and almost dissipated. Because is that a threat that there's possibly two kind of threats that could potentially surface there, and I want to maybe ask you on both of them. So the first one would be, could that possibly dilute the quality of the course? And secondly, do you think that might be kind of a death knell for maybe some of the lesser popular courses, and then universities might lead to scrap them if there's no demand there?
Yeah, I suppose that's a very interesting point. I don't think it'll really. I suppose when you offer the courses maybe to more people, but they're still ring fenced within the business school, there's still that level of selectivity. So I don't think more people being able to pick Professor Pearse Montgomery's finance class is going to necessarily go down in terms of prestige or whatever. And then can you repeat the second question?
Yeah, so then the second question would probably be, if there was maybe a shift to this lack of capacity for maybe on a broader prospect for courses in general, do you think that maybe some of the courses that some people might have been landed into by no choice of their own, I'm thinking maybe some of the lesser popular maybe arts courses or something, could universities potentially do away with them if they were only getting 5 or 6 people applying for them every year?
Yeah, I guess I don't think there's as much of a harm in something disappearing if it's things that people don't want.
Yeah, maybe there's a lesson there for the ECB to stop pumping money into zombie companies.
I'm sure. There've been times that we've ended up in a class in UCD and we thought we wouldn't have minded if it were scrapped.
we'll name no names, Paddy, but you might be right on that one.
One or two I've certainly slept through, yeah.
And then I suppose, bearing in mind we're trying to keep these new episodes short and sweet, I suppose, what does the kind of future then hold, Paddy? What's the future for the business school look like?
Yeah, look, I think people have maybe overstated how bleak things are looking for business schools. I think there's still going to be a need for business schools in the future, and I think right now campuses are closed, but I think gradually over the next year, whatever, we're going to see things return to normality, and I think that we're going to kind of get more of a hybrid approach in kind of blending learning on campus and online. So I'm thinking, to go back to the example of there's 100 students enrolled in your finance class, Pearse, advanced derivatives or whatever, 101. yeah, I think, there could be 100 students in the class, maybe with the lecture hall, there might be a limit on who can come in any day. Maybe you have to like kind of book your place and the first 50 people could come in. And it might be kind of like more socially distant or whatever. And you might have to like use hand sanitizer or whatever, wear masks. But then people will be able to watch the lecture live from their home, or maybe watch it again from at a later time or date. And I think maybe it's going to be more important for business schools to maybe leverage their facilities, such as libraries and study areas, to allow people to follow what's going on in the class without necessarily being in the lecture hall. So I think, yeah, there's just going to have to be some kind of innovation around the problem.
And I just want to bring Eoin Hickey on there to expand.
Yeah, I think, like he was saying, it's going to be so uncertain over the next year or so, or next 2-3 years, about how enrollments are going to go. And like he said, I don't think it will be the death of business schools, but there will be a need to adapt to the demand for them and how people will want to go about their business these days. With everybody being able to work from home, it's not so inconceivable that a lot more online modules could be offered by a lot of MBAs over the coming few years. But we'll see certainly some innovation around education over the next few years, definitely. And it's going to be brilliant to see. It could be a great age of education for people to be able to go online and get their courses rather than having to go in every day. But that also, again, remains to be seen, to see how the courses react to it.
Yeah, and maybe then just to kind of jump on there, Eoin, with something that you said and maybe something that Paddy said. Paddy, kind of predicted that maybe we might see a bit of a return to normality, maybe for the ebb and flow of the business or the MBA market. Would you then be if it did return to that, and the job market was strong, would you consider doing this one maybe for Eoin? Would you consider doing an executive type MBA or a professional MBA if half the classes were online, or would that be something you would want, or would that put you off maybe an executive MBA further down the line?
I think it's something that nearly lends itself to people who are working, even more so than ever. There's not very many companies that can allow you to come 1 or 2 days out of your day every week to go in and do a professional MBA or an executive MBA. Whereas if these courses are offered online, it can be completely outside of the business, and that you'll have your time to go do your MBA without having that strain on your professional life at the same time. So it is something that nearly makes it more attractive to people to go in and do an MBA whilst continuing in their career rather than taking it as a career break.
Interesting. Now, I suppose, and maybe even just then to point on that, you just mentioned that it could be potentially more attractive to some other people. Paddy, do you think that online classes, that sort of thing, could broaden the market for people who want to do an MBA maybe outside of the traditional business graduate?
Yeah, I think that trend of people saying other kind of online courses outside of the MBA might threaten the MBA. I think for people from, let's say, non-business backgrounds, let's say engineering backgrounds, who are kind of going in more for the kind of getting that grounding in business, I think will take a more, let's say, modular approach, to borrow what you said earlier on. But I still think people who want some of the experience, the networking, enhancing their kind of branding or whatever, and they're maybe looking to leverage the school's prestige. I think within the next not for maybe the intake now in 2020, but maybe in the intake 2021, that will still apply. And I think people right now, if you look at the intake for 2021, people have already kind of maybe made clear their I suppose intentions to their employer to leave or whatever. They're already committed, they're already enrolled. So I think right now they really have to go for it. And I think then we're going to see an improvement in kind of travel restrictions, campus openings, all that. That's going to see kind of more of a return to normal. And I think maybe on a kind of closing note, I think it's definitely good for students to look at how business schools are adapting under a bit of pressure themselves, because that's what they're supposed to teach at the end of the
day. No, that's a very good point, Paddy. And I think just like everyone else, MBAs seem to be hoping for that V-shaped recovery back to normality, so they can leverage the things that they've learned themselves, as you just mentioned.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're gonna wrap it up there. It's a very interesting topic, and one that's close to a lot of our hearts. Mr. Eoin Hickey, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Paddy O'Grady, all the way from Germany.
Thanks again, Pearse.
No, it was an absolute pleasure. I hope that all you guys at home had as much fun listening to this episode on I was going to say the death of the NBA, or the supposed death of the NBA, as much fun as we had producing it.
The apparent death of the NBA.
Yeah, the apparent death of the NBA. And this podcast, just like all the rest of them, will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as new video outlets, such as you guys might have heard of YouTube. It's this new up-and-coming video platform that we're probably going to be putting this show up on as well. So
we're trying to get in early.
Yeah, get in early, yeah. But until next time, guys, go easy and take care.